The Northern Gateway Pipeline is a 1,177-kilometer-long pipeline running from Brudenheim, Alberta to a marine terminal in Kitimat, British Columbia. The Northern Gateway Pipeline will cross more than 785 rivers and streams. Many of these rivers are critical fish-bearing habitat. 3 feet in diameter, the Northern Gateway Pipeline will transport 500,000 barrels of unrefined oil to the Pacific coast. From there, tankers will transport this oil through the Douglas Channel and across the Pacific Ocean. It also transports 200,000 barrels of condensate due east. The pipeline will cross through the headwaters of 3 of North America's most important watersheds, the Mackenzie, the Fraser, and the Skeena. The Northern Gateway Pipeline may compromise the lifestyles of First Nations who depend on these waters, and may threaten the economies of British Columbia communities that depend on fisheries. All pipelines affect the environment, and choosing a pipeline route that avoids vulnerable areas becomes a key factor in construction. The environmental effects of pipeline construction and operation include noise, reduced air quality, eroded, contaminated, or removed soils, geologic altercations, vegetation disturbance, alteration or removal of wildlife habitat, and reduced water quality. As with all construction projects, an environmental assessment was made for the Northern Gateway Pipeline. The Governor and Council has decided that the Northern Gateway Pipeline is not likely to cause significant adverse environmental effects to fish and fish habitat, aquatic species, migratory birds, land outside of Canada, and Aboriginal people, but it is likely to cause significant adverse environmental effects to certain populations of woodland caribou and grizzly bear. Unfortunately, the environmental impacts of pipelines cannot be avoided entirely, only reduced to acceptable levels. However, what is deemed acceptable is a value of judgment. The risk of most concern to people are not those associated with a functioning pipeline, but with a rupture. The release of crude oil to the environment causes a number of problems to the environment and to human health. Oil can catch fire or explode, and may contain a variety of toxic chemicals. A typical example is the Enbridge crude oil spill in the Kalamazoo River in Michigan. It cost $725 million to clean up, and the Kalamazoo River was closed for most purposes for almost 2 years. The main alternative to pipelines for transporting crude oil are trains. Currently, 5,000 barrels of Western Canadian oil are transported by train per day. There are more environmental concerns associated with the operation of a train than a pipeline. The pipeline project is expected to have a significant benefit for the Canadian GDP. The construction of Northern Gateway Pipeline will contribute to around $270 billion of GDP over the course of 30 years. It will also add $81 billion projected to government revenue and $48 billion projected labor income. There is a significant increase in job opportunities in BC and a fair amount of long-term employment afterwards. It will add $830 million revenue to the province.
They are inserted into pre-described launcher receivers, I think we call them, in the pipeline, and they move with the flow in the line. They begin recording when they start, and they stop recording when they come to the end. Once the tools are received at the destination, the vendors will move them from the pipeline and download the information from them. They assess whether the information is accurate, and if it is, they provide that information to us.
Control center is staffed 24/7 by highly trained personnel who are there to operate the pipeline system, to manage the leak detection system, and to also shut the pipeline system down in the event of any abnormal operations.
80% of the route is on Crown land, and we're sure that we're not in seismic sensitive areas, that the water crossings can be crossed in an environmental way.
My default position is pipelines, sure, but not there.
We could cover the annual cost of universal childcare or 4 years of tuition for 492,000 students. 3 new pipelines would generate an additional $11 billion in taxes. Imagine what we could do.